Bonjour à tous.
Hello there. The helicopter behind me is an Alouette III, but this particular one is very special. It's registered HB-XOF, affectionately known as Oscar Fox. She was the very last Alouette III operated by a company in the Alps. The Alouette III was the rescue helicopter of excellence for about 50 years. Oscar Fox was withdrawn from service on the 18th of June 2014. We were lucky enough to follow her during her last flights. Fasten your seatbelt and enjoy your flight in this legendary machine. We are at Sion Airport. It's the 6th of June 2014. Help is needed in the region of Les Odeurs. In less than 5 minutes, the Alouette III HB-XOF, abbreviated Oscar Fox, takes off with her crew. This Alouette III is very special. She is the very last one in service in the Alps. She will be retired in 12 days exactly. It will be the end of nearly 50 years of history at Air-Glaciers.
Personnellement, je suis triste.
I'm sad because it's an important moment, the end of an era. It will come soon, and we have to accept it. It's a separation, so I'm a bit sad, yes.
Un peu de tristesse, ouais.
The history of the Alouette III began in the 1950s. In 1955, Sud-Aviation unveiled the Alouette II model with 5 seats. This helicopter was the first one in the world with a turbo shaft instead of a piston engine. Its success was immediate. Then, the engineers at Sud-Aviation presented the Alouette III, a more powerful helicopter with 7 seats. The first SE-3160 prototype took off in 1959. Meanwhile, in the Valais, pioneers Hermann Geiger and Fernand Montagnoni had to fight every day with the underpowered Bell 47. The first Alouette III of Air-Glaciers was bought in 1965.
Bell were piston-powered helicopters. The more you climb, the more you lose power with a piston engine, as you know. We didn't have this problem with the Artust 3B, turbo shaft of the Alouette III anymore. We had nearly the same power here at Sion as in the mountains for rescue and transport missions at high altitude.
Oscar Fox came to Air-Glaciers only years later. She was built in 1967 and flew 16 years with the Danish Army. In 1983, the company bought 3 Alouette IIIs from the Danish, including Oscar Fox. These helicopters were cleared from their floats and repainted in the full Air-Glaciers colours.
We made an offer for these Alouette III from the north to collect spare parts. That's why we suddenly had 3 grey military Alouettes for an army. We were able to buy them for a good price.
The Sécurité Civile and the Gendarmerie operate the aerial rescue in France. It is the 31st of May 2014. The Sécurité Civile base of Annecy are celebrating their 50th anniversary. The crowd discover the different rescue services. The Alouette III was retired a few years ago and replaced by the EC-145. This twin-engine machine is much bigger. But Oscar Fox was there, and a man was very emotional in her cabin.
It's a machine with an extraordinary rotor and extraordinary controls. I will miss her. I'm touching her. It's like saying goodbye to my mistress.
The man you just saw is René Romé. He is a living legend of aerial rescue in the region of Mont Blanc. Many mountaineers call him the rescuer of the impossible. As a pilot at the Sécurité Civile, he accumulated 17,000 flight hours and 6,000 rescue missions. And René Romé is very laudative when he speaks about the Alouette.
The Alouette III has a reliable engine. The engine is very, very reliable, and the rotor will never betray you. When you take the stick like this, you feel all the vibrations. You communicate with the machine. It's a sensory way of flying. New generation helicopters don't have the same reactions. You don't communicate like this with the machine. You don't need to check the instruments during a winch operation in a cliff. You just have to look at rock falls. You don't look at the inside, and she forgives everything. Everything. She is an extraordinary machine.
Winch operations with very long cables are frequent today. These pictures were shot at Lauterbrunnen in May 2014. The exercise consisted in winching rescuers off a cliff with a 300-metre cable. At the beginning of the Alouette, everything had to be invented.
Two Britons had been trapped for 8 days at Les Dreux. At the time, we had a winch which was 25 metres long, of which 20 metres was usable. The cliff was so steep that it was impossible to reach the two guys who had been trapped there for 8 days. My mechanic unrolled the cable, he swung it laterally. The companion of the injured climber attached him to the strap, and we snatched the guy off the cliff. We were at 3,600 metres. That was a very special rescue. Later, we requested much longer winches. We received a 40 metres long one. Now they have 80 metres winch on the EC-145. You can imagine the evolution in aerial rescue.
The Swiss Army was interested in the Alouette III very early. The first models arrived in Switzerland in 1964. Then, no less than 84 Alouette IIIs flew in Swiss Army colours. René Onzeler is a retired military pilot. Between 1966 and 1999, he accumulated 4,000 flight hours with the Alouette III. His missions were very varied.
Les missions, c'était vraiment, elle était extrêmement large.
The Alouette undertook a range of missions, including the transportation of passengers, VIPs and goods. It was used for firefighting, rescue, photo flights and so on. The Alouette had all qualities. She was roomy, reliable and multifunctional.
Elle était manœuvrable. Elle était...
We could land on slopes, we could land in high snow with temperatures of -25 degrees Celsius without any problem. I must say, the Alouette was an entire success.
The military Alouette sometimes operated rescue missions for civilians. Today it's the 28th of July 1982. 3 members of a youth and sports group fell at the Klein Foucaulhorn. Their wounds were extremely severe. One Alouette took off from Ladrino in the canton of Ticino. Meanwhile, René Onzeler arrived at the scene in a second Alouette. He started the winch operation in the wind and fog.
Ça a été assez long parce que c'était difficile d'embarquer ces garçons.
It was a long operation. Getting the guys on board was difficult. One of them had lost his hands. They had been severed at his wrists. The rescue crew had difficulty finding them. They put them into a plastic bag. We winched the guy up with a 28-metre long cable. He was haggard and had concussion. He had a fractured pelvis and both hands cut off. The second guy had a fractured spine. We loaded him on board too.
Cette colonne vertébrale endommagée, si je peux dire,
I dived because there was little fuel. I had hovered for 18 minutes there. I dived in reverse, following the edge of the Klein-Foucault-Horn.
Meanwhile, Colonel Monzeglio arrived from Ticino. He flew the young man with severed hands to the Insel Hospital in Bern in appalling weather.
Il devait sauter les lignes haute tension à saut de mouton.
He had to jump over the power lines like a leapfrog, and on one occasion he had to fly under a power line to move forward because the hands couldn't wait. At the hospital, 2 teams operated on him for 9 hours to sew his hands back on.
Qui ont travaillé pendant 9 heures pour remettre les mains en place pour les recoudre.
The 3 men are now in perfect health, thanks to the 2 Alouette IIIs. In 1987, Reme Onzola and Ettore Monzeglio received the Pro Aero Prize, the highest Swiss aviation accolade.
Et je dois dire que, en recevant ce prix,
when I got this prize, I thought deeply about all of those who had made this mission possible.
cet engagement.
In 2014, the military rescue missions were operated by the EC-635. The Alouette III had been withdrawn from service a few years earlier.
En 2010, le Conseil fédéral a décidé donc de retirer les Alouettes.
In 2010, the federal government and the army chief decided to give the last 10 Alouettes to Pakistan, with a special goal to enable search and rescue in the mountains.
Au Pakistan, mais avec un but précis, c'était le sauvetage, disons la recherche et le sauvetage en montagne.
And 10 of these helicopters were sent there in perfect technical condition.
Technique absolument impeccable.
Designed in the 1950s, the Alouette III needs daily care. Every day it's the same routine with the grease gun and the rag. And at the heart of the beast there is the Artus 3B, a big powerful turboshaft also developed in the 1950s.
Turboshaft spins at 33,500 RPM and transmits its power to the main transmission through a clutch and a freewheel. Then the transmission drives this energy to the main rotor and to the tail rotor at the rear of the helicopter.
Manufactured by French company Turbomeca, the Artus has no electronic components. Given the archaic technology of the 1950s, the reliability of this engine is simply amazing.
We had only 3 failures with the Artus in 200,000 flight hours. This turboshaft powers the Lama too, hence the 200,000 flight hours in 49 years with Air-Glaciers.
I've been flying the Alouette III for 45 years, almost 50 years. I had only 2 failures in that time. 2 failures in 17,000 hours of flying. 2 failures, no more.
D'après mes renseignements,
According to my information, the Swiss Army flew between 350 and 380,000 hours with the Alouette without any failure. Only once did an engine stop because snow was sucked in. Apart from that, this machine was absolutely reliable at all altitudes.
à toutes les altitudes.
In the 1950s and 60s, when this helicopter was developed, electronics didn't really exist yet. The helicopter is made of mechanical components only. This is why it's so reliable.
Nevertheless, if the turboshaft should stop, the pilot proceeds to an auto-rotation. By inverting the tilt of the blades, the rotor revolves like a windmill. The manoeuvre ends with a flare and a smooth landing.
If we flew her properly, she behaved well. She was an extraordinary machine in auto-rotation too. I had an engine failure with the Alouette III in the mountains. I dived to Chamonix with the engine off. She is a machine with an extraordinary rotor and extraordinary control.
Oscar Oscar, the Alouette you are seeing at the moment, is an SA319B, a variant developed by Sud-Aviation in 1967. It is not powered by the Artust engine, but by an HB-XOO turboshaft. Oscar Oscar first flew with Rega, the Swiss air ambulance. Then she was bought by a private company. Silvio Refondini started to fly the Alouette III when he was 19 years old. He had many opportunities to compare both models as a military pilot, then as a Rega pilot.
The Alouette III Artust, which equipped Air-Glaciers, the Swiss Army, is less powerful than the HB-XOO variant. I was lucky to fly the HB-XOO with the Rega. The main difference between these helicopters is that the HB-XOO can lift more payload and it is less noisy, which is very important for flights over cities. If I flew a military one at Payerne in the morning, then an HB-XOO at Riga in the afternoon, I can tell you that I really felt the difference. Oh yes. Why? It was more powerful, really. As soon as we reached a certain altitude, the HB-XOO was much more fuel efficient than the Artust. As we worked most of the time above 1,000 meters, the consumption was less. We had a better capacity, a better range with this helicopter. Because the HB-XOO revolved 10,000 RPM faster than the Artust, this machine was deemed more delicate to fly, but we never had any problems. There aren't more failures with the HB-XOO than with the Artust. There are only two categories of pilots. The ones who were lucky to fly the HB-XOO had a big smile, and the Artust ones, well, they had a smile too because the turbo shaft was outstanding too. But the HB-XOO was a must, really.
Swiss Air Ambulance, in other words Rega, owns 16 Alouette III with HB-XOO engines. Among them, this one, Hotel Yankee, the one flown by Silvio Refondini and based at Lausanne. When this base was created in 1979, Refondini wanted the Alouette III and the Alouette only. The Rega chiefs at Zurich were very surprised.
They stared at me with big eyes. They asked me, "Don't you want the Balcow, the twin engine?" I said no, because we had the capacity to fly the Glacier of Le Débleret from Lausanne in just 15 minutes. The little mountain of Le Débleret was the highest place at 3,200 meters, where we had to operate. The Alouette was brilliant at this altitude. She was brilliant on the Lake of Geneva. She was brilliant everywhere. We had an outstanding reserve of power. This allowed us to achieve missions successfully for more than 10 years, by day and by night.
In 1992, the Alouette III were replaced by the Augusta 109 K2 at Rega. This brand new helicopter was a twin engine. It was a dream machine, but the crew somehow missed the Alouette.
No modern helicopter will ever offer the outstanding visibility that we had with the Alouette III. This was the biggest regret when we received the K2. But as every pilot is flexible, we adapted to this machine, and this helicopter offered so many additional advantages compared to the Alouette that we really enjoyed it over the 10 years that we had it.
It is the 8th of June 2014, 9 days before the retirement of Oscar Fox. The old lady is performing passenger flights at the Bernese base of Lauterbrunnen. Adolf Litzler is at the controls. This pilot flew the first Alouette III to the base in 1971. The flight between the Eiger and the Jungfrau is a dream. More than 2,000 Alouette III were built in all versions over the world. Every Alouette has stories to tell. For example, this astonishing rescue mission in the heart of the town of Sion in 2005.
On a dû aller chercher quelqu'un qui était tombé dans un bâtiment en construction.
We had to recover a person who fell in a building which was under construction. There was no possibility to access the scene of the accident because the ladders fell and the scaffolds didn't allow the rescue teams to transport the injured person through this maze. The helicopter had to intervene, and the good old Alouette did the job in the middle of the town. Yes, it was very special.
We are back at Lauterbrunnen. Today the Alps' last Alouette is engaged in winch rescue training. The Alouette III saved thousands of lives around the world. How many exactly?
Écoute, simplement,
since the base was established at Annecy in 1964, the Alouette III has saved approximately 40,000 people in the Haute-Savoie area of Annecy only.
Air-Glaciers completed approximately 70,000 rescue missions. 2/3 or 3/4 of them were accomplished by the Alouettes. So many people had a special moment in these superb Alouettes.
De vivre un moment particulier dans ces superbes Alouettes.
It is the 15th of June 2014. Oscar Fox will be retiring in just 3 days' time. The old lady is saying goodbye to her admirers at Sion Airport. Around 200 people booked a flight. That's many more than expected. Additional flights are organised in the afternoon. The love for Oscar Fox is huge.
Je pense que ça s'explique pas, c'est l'Alouette de par son.
It's difficult to explain this. The sound and the shape of the Alouette are in everybody's minds in the valley. Everybody had the opportunity to see her several times. This helicopter is regarded as a machine which does good. It's a rescue machine. I think that is a kind of gratitude towards the Alouette.
Ils reconnaissent ça et c'est une reconnaissance par rapport à cette Alouette.
Ralph Werlen is a spotter, in other words an aviation photographer. He has been an Alouette fan for many years. He would not have missed this day under any circumstances. This farewell is very emotional to him.
Alors, l'état d'esprit un peu mitigé.
My state of mind is a bit mixed today. A mix of joy, sadness, melancholy, because it's the last flight of the Alouette III, and I love this machine.
Ralph Werlen first met the Alouette in the 70s at Zermatt. The passion never left him since. He owns a website about this helicopter.
J'allais me promener souvent sur la place d'hélicoptère.
I often walked to the helipad and I saw her. It was like a boom. I think she is the most beautiful flying machine ever.
Moi, c'est la plus belle machine qui existe, quoi, qui ait jamais volé.
Alors celle-là, ça c'est une Alouette spéciale.
This is a very special Alouette. This is Delta Alpha. She was built in 1969 and was the very first Alouette at Air-Zermatt. She is my beloved one, because I lived in Zermatt. She had several world premieres. She first evacuated a person from the north face of the Eiger. She performed the first night rescue mission. I loved the Ferrari red colour of this machine. She is sublime. I fell in love with her when I was a child.
Alors ça, c'est la Charlie Bravo.
This one is Charlie Bravo. She was the very first Swiss-registered Alouette III in 1965. She is a mythical machine. She really is the flagship of Air-Glaciers.
Alors ça, c'est la JBL ou la Bravo Lima.
That one is JBL, or Bravo Lima. Our French friends who love helicopters know her by heart. She is on display at Le Bourget. All inhabitants of Chamonix know her because she flew for more than 20 years in that region. She has 17,000 flight hours, 18,000 rescue missions. Without major incident, that is just incredible. This machine lasted for 20 years, without accident. That's just crazy.
Passé 30 ans, quoi. C'est juste dingue, quoi, sans accident. Elle a fait tellement partie de notre quotidien pendant...
She belongs so much to our daily lives for about 50 years, and lots of spotters are nostalgic because they see that everything has an end. I personally thought she would be eternal. It's just incredible for an aircraft to have such success for 49 years. This shows the quality of manufacturing of this machine and how she was thought. She is simple. She is robust. She was made to last for a long time.
A few days before her retirement, Oscar Fox still made little children dream. She was so well built, she helped people for more than 50 years. However, modernity defeated this outstanding bird.
Le problème est le suivant, c'est que nous pouvons normalement continuer.
The problem is the following. We could normally continue to fly with the Alouette. It's more of a financial problem. The spare parts for the Alouette became so expensive that it isn't possible to make profit with this helicopter anymore. It's evolution. They cannot rebuild the Alouette III now. The parts are very expensive. This door is handmade by craftsmen. All this curve is made by craftsmen. Everything is made by stamping in factories now. It's not the same manufacturing process.
It's the 18th of June 2014. Oscar Fox is just back from her last flight. The spotters are waiting for her on the tarmac. The flashes are crackling. It's time for a last group picture before putting the Alouette back into her hangar. This time it's over. Not quite, in fact. Oscar Fox will accomplish a very last rescue mission in the night.
Quand il faut se séparer de quelqu'un ou de quelque chose qui vous a été fidèle pendant 50 ans.
It's extremely emotional to say goodbye to somebody or something who's been faithful to you for 50 years. And I have a problem. It's very difficult to find a replacement helicopter in the context of such security, space, visibility on these new generation helicopters.
She is not ready to be replaced. Yes, there are more powerful machines. Yes, there are machines with more space. Yes, there are machines with longer winches, which made us dream at the time of the Alouette III. But this helicopter offered possibilities to load and unload a patient very easily. We were able to approach a cliff in the wind without difficulties. We had an outstanding reserve of power, an excellent visibility on the right for the pilot and on the left for the winchman. The Alouette remained simply fabulous. She offered so many advantages. Modern helicopters are good, yes. They have additional things that we didn't have with the Alouette. They have air conditioning. They have an autopilot. They have wonderful screens. But the Alouette III will remain unbeatable for a long time.
There is a funny anecdote about the Alouette III. The director of Sud-Aviation first refused the project, but the engineers insisted. They were finally given 1 million francs and they were challenged to build a prototype in just 1 year. If they failed, they would have been fired. The result was simply amazing. That's all for today. Many thanks for watching. Fly safely and see you next time.